So Ashley Hearn, who is our pre and postnatal specialist here at Burn, and then several members had over the years, educated me that once you are postpartum,
you're always postpartum.
You already know what I was going to say, right?
Yes.
So in effect, there's this long fifth trimester that it's an inevitable to experience that and the byproducts of a childbirth for pretty much the rest of your life. I'm assuming. So let's finish this kind of segment here on going through the fifth trimester. Do you call it that? Is that a thing?
I think I'm going to start calling it that, and I'll give you credit. Give you credit that
this is my contribution.
The fourth trimester is those 12 weeks after birth, and then everything else is your fifth trimester. I like it.
All right. Well, if you want, just give me a little credit in your next book and like the back section. I'll come on your podcast and I'll be like, you know what?
I coined that
Let's
term.
talk about the fifth trimester. Okay. So talk to me about that. Now we're cleared.
Yeah.
We've done your program.
Yes.
Okay. And we're feeling better.
Yes.
We're getting into it. If you don't do the fourth trimester the right way, what happens if you do the fourth trimester the right way? This seems to be a very important time.
It is.
Prerequisite to the fifth trimester to the future.
Yes. So what I would say is, yes, once postpartum, always postpartum, because I've had clients come over the years and they say like, but my baby is a year and a half. I'm not postpartum. Like, yes, you are. Like, you're postpartum when they're 20 years old. Like you've been through that, and your body is still, in a lot of ways, certainly you recover and you get stronger and you can get back to doing a lot of the things that you want to do, but you still have to be aware of a lot of different things. And that fourth trimester, the one thing I do want to say is that a lot of times people don't get to that work in the fourth trimester, right? Life gets in the way. They have a colicky baby. They have other toddlers. And sometimes women are coming and they're like, my kids are 4 or 5. They're finally in school. Now I want to focus on me. You still want to do some of that core recovery work, even if you've recovered from the pregnancy and the delivery, but maybe you don't have that connection. What happens is that we go through this pregnancy, we have a baby, somebody hands us a human to care for, and those muscles are deconditioned. They've been stretched, they've been through trauma. So our body is amazing. What does it do? Everything else comes in to compensate, right? So our glutes, our low back, even like our other parts of our core, our obliques, hips, things like that, hip flexors are going to come in to help you when you're doing the things in daily life, like carrying the babies, lifting the toddlers, things like that. So then they get used to doing that. So women come, and it's been years since they have had babies, and they still want to work on that deep core and pelvic floor connection because their bodies have been compensating for years. And often if you don't do the work, to do that, you go into your workouts and you do that. So you could see somebody who could hold a plank and be look super strong in their core, but it's all those superficial muscles. It's their glutes helping, it's their hip flexors, it's their low back, and maybe their deep core is not firing in the way that it should. So that's why I recommend that everybody, if you didn't have a proper core recovery, or, you didn't do that core work in the first several weeks, once you can exercise, you can do it at any time. And you at least want to be doing some of that as when you get back into fitness, whether that's weeks later or years later. And then within that, I think it's just always being aware of that. Like, I'm never going to, and again, I would say this for everybody, that deep core work and pelvic floor work is just going to aid in everything that you do. So even men have a pelvic floor too, like knowing how to engage with that. I had a male client who had a back injury, and a big part of his recovery was pelvic floor work. And he was like, I didn't even know that guys had that. So knowing how to engage, you're going to be stronger in your lifts. You're going to be stronger in your workouts. You're going to be stronger in your activities of daily living. So I think it's in the postpartum world, certainly in the immediate postpartum, we need that, but really for the rest of our lives. And, women come all the time and they say like, oh, I'm not strong, or I can't lift heavy. And then I'm like, how much do your kids weigh? How much do your kids weigh? Like,
They're like, they're proud of it.
Yeah, I know. I love that about kids.
They're like 52 pounds, 46.6 pounds, and 29.8 pounds.
I love it.
They weigh themselves every day. They love it.
If only the rest of us could be that way.
They want to be big like dad. That's why they do it. Like, Dad, how much are you?
Yeah.
You're 210. Wow.
I can do it.
I'm going to be 210. I'm going to go eat some chicken.
Right? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So, when you think about that, like, I'm like, you think you can't lift that 10 pounds when you're lifting 40, 50 pounds all day long. We want to balance that. We want to get more functional with our movements so you can feel better when you're doing that. So you don't have back pain because you're carrying the 50-pound toddler on this side.
Especially the car seats. Like when a baby's in a car seat, like I'm struggling to.
I mean, that's what I said that after my first. I was like, how does anybody who doesn't work out do this? Like, and we just do. We just adapt. So knowing like we want to balance that. We want to be training for life in that way. Because those kids are only going to get bigger and they'll still want you to pick them up. So
when you're talking about the pelvic floor muscles, I believe there's a muscle down there somewhere. Is it called the perineum?
Yes.
That muscle.
Yeah.
When I meditate a lot.
Yeah.
And I like to, when you say breathing techniques, I'm like, ooh, tell me more.
Yeah.
But I'm just like always trying different ways to meditate. My favorite one is Kundalini meditation.
Yeah.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Where you're pushing up like energy through your perineum, through your belly button, up through your heart, up through your throat, up through your head. And you're trying to like push energy out like to the top of your head. It's the pelvic floor and the perineum, the same thing.
They're different, but they're connected. It's all part of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I
need to brush up on my anatomy here. It's been a while since I've been working the business for a long time. I haven't done a lot of anatomy lately.
Well, and what's interesting about the female pelvic floor is that it's pretty intricate. And so a lot of times, for years we told women, do Kegels, and the way you should Kegel is squeeze like you're trying to stop the flow of urine, right? Like you're peeing and you want to stop, right? And what happened when we use cues like that is we end up squeezing our glutes, right? Because that's what we know, and that's what we do in class and things like the camp.
You did it! Yeah, let's go.
My class, your camp.
Yep.
But knowing that like. That's what our brain kind of computes as like, oh, okay, I'm going to squeeze my glutes. But how do we translate that to pelvic floor? And what we have learned, in the pre-post industry is we have to use different cues, and we have to use anatomy like the perineum, like the anus, like the vagina, like the sits bones. So when we think of the pelvic floor for women, especially, it's your pubic bone, your tailbone, your sits bones. And if we think of it like, I often will use a tissue as a visual, like you're lifting like a fishing net. You're lifting like you're trying to lift a blueberry. You don't want to squish the blueberry. You want to lift it. So strong, but gentle, right? So we're not over gripping with the glutes. We're not creating that tension in other places. We're actually using the muscles to lift, or like sucking through a straw. So I love that you do that. You're probably way more in tune to your pelvic floor than most men.
Yeah. It was a weird sensation at first.
Right?
Yeah.
But you really connect with your core. I mean, on the meditative level, it's totally different too, but like just when you use those cues and you can really visualize, and you're like, oh my gosh, I never knew. Like I was just squeezing with my glutes. So
that's kind of like, especially on guys, because we don't necessarily have to worry about delivery.
Right.
We've got there's this like section of lost muscle.
Yeah.
That like, you as a guy, you don't think about your inner thighs, your pelvic floor, your perineum.
Sure. Yeah.
And I started doing Kundalini meditation quite often, maybe once every couple weeks or so.
Yeah, good for you.
And, I can really notice a difference in my lunges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I notice a difference in like my spring back.
Yeah.
How it feels I just feel tight.
Yeah.
I feel tighter. I feel like in more control. So even for guys, I believe that it's a useful muscle and set of muscles to exercise.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to share a story with you.
Sure, please.
Because I want to you've mentioned a couple times about C-sections.
Yes.
So we have our daughter Cameron, vaginal birth. It goes great. Everything's good. Morgan follows a lot of the advice that you're giving today. And we go in, we want to recreate that with our second, and we're there. Everything's going seemingly the same. All of a sudden we're in the hospital room and we hear beep, 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 beep.
Heartbeat. Yeah.
Nurses run in, doctors run in. They come in. They're not like
oxygen.
They're not.
All of it.
They're not like happy. They're not panicking. But I'm intuitive, and I'm like, you guys don't like that very much, do you?
Yeah.
And obviously, the sound beep beep is like that's an alarm. Like you're not.
We've all seen that on TV.
Exactly. Okay, so they go out, or they come in, and they say, if that happens again, all right, we're going to come back in and we're going to have to make decisions. That's all they said.
Yeah.
Okay. So they leave about 5 minutes later. Beep, 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 beep. This time they don't just come in. They come in. They have a mobile bed for Morgan. They put Morgan in the mobile bed. they don't say a single word to me. They don't even look at me and they're just gone. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, at the time I was reading a book, you know, just trying to like keep my mind off it. I look up and everyone's gone. I'm freaking out. I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, I feel hopeless, you know, in a sense. Yeah. I'm like, what's going on? And the nurse goes, yeah, you can't go back there. And I said, nurse, listen to me. You've got to tell me what's going on at the very least. And then she goes, hold on, I'll be right back. And then so she comes back. I have this whole like basically hazmat suit. And then I'm able to go back. And what happened was Maxwell, our first son, as Morgan's water broke, he had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck and he was suffocating. And so emergency C-section. That was an experience of a lifetime. Yeah. I got to witness everything that happened back there. And we don't need to go into the details, but for those of you who have witnessed that before, it is mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. The medical procedure that goes into a C-section. And so I'm scared for my life, Morgan's life, Maxwell's life. Yeah. And everything ends up turning out really great, as great as it could. And they said if we would have left him in there for 5 more minutes, that you never know what could have happened because the deoxidation could cause brain damage. It could cause who knows what, oxygen obviously is the cure all for in the gasoline that keeps our life running. Right. And so Morgan had a C-section. It was emergency C-section and it wasn't one that we planned for. Sure. And so just a long way to ask this question, you know, as you're going through all the, you know, we just walked through basically 4 trimesters plus a postpartum 5th. What's different when you have a C-section? What's different when you've had a baby that way rather than vaginally, and what considerations do you want to make? It is all the stuff that you said, does all that hold true? And what extra precautions do we need to take? And then maybe, you know, a lot of women prefer a C-section. Ours was an emergency. Some prefer, and they will have it scheduled. And just talk to me about C-sections and what to look out for if you're thinking about like pre-scheduling one. Yeah. If you do have an emergency one. I know you like to bounce around and move laterally, so I'm just giving you this dish of things to talk about. And let's go deep. Let's go deep with C-sections. Yeah. So, well, first of all, I really appreciate you saying vaginally versus natural, and I think that's a big I'm doing part good. You're doing great. Oh, good. Because you know, and I don't fault anybody who does say that because that's been the language forever. Like, did you have a natural birth or did you have a C-section? But for women who've been through that, it's a little bit. There's some stigma around it, right? Oh, I didn't have a natural birth because I had a C-section. And I can tell you, and Morgan can tell you, it is not the easy way out. It is really challenging. The recovery is challenging. And it's, you know, my doctor said it this way, and I truly believe this, that every C-section is an emergency, not to that degree. And I had a very similar experience of the beeping and the oxygen. And then I was sent to the hospital to be induced. And then when they started, his heartbeat was dropping, and it's terrifying. Right. And like, it's terrifying for us. It's terrifying for the partner. My husband was the same way. He was like, I don't know what to do. I'm not used to feeling hopeless. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And you know, you're used to feeling kind of in control, or like, I can fix this. I can do this. So I appreciate you saying vaginally, because I think that's one thing that we can all start with is just changing the language so we can reduce that stigma of like, and when women usually nowadays, when women schedule a C-section, it's because there's a medical reason, you know, and it may be something that seems minor to us, but it's big to them, you know? So I think all C-sections, there's a medical reason, and thank God, you know, because Maxwell's here, my son Kai is here, like we're all healthy and happy and safe. Within that, I would say, like, you know, for me, one of the hard things was that my whole pregnancy, and it was probably the same for Morgan, everybody was like, oh, you're so fit, you're so strong, you're just going to push that baby right out. And then my first was this emergency C-section, and I was not expecting it. I knew it could happen. And you know, logically in your mind, oh, this is the best thing. I'm so grateful. All that matters is that the baby's safe and I'm safe. But it still can be really hard. And for me, most things in my life, like I was an athlete growing up. I didn't come by things really naturally. I just worked hard. I just hustled, you know? So most things physically in my life that I wanted to do, I could do.
I want to play this sport. I want to run a marathon. I want to be a trainer. Like I could do that. So this felt like, well, this is the one thing that as a woman, naturally I should be able to do and my body couldn't do it. So I think we sometimes brush over the emotional side of it for women because we think like, of course, the only thing that matters is that everybody is safe and healthy. But that doesn't mean that it's not hard for us emotionally and then you add in breastfeeding and everything else that goes along with having a newborn and you're, emotional to begin with. So there's that side of it. And then I think on the physical side, because you've seen it, I think it's 7 layers that you're going through. You're going through the skin, you're going through the fascia, you're going through the muscle, you're going through the uterus. Like there's so much that is happening that is being cut through. And doctors are amazing because they do it so quickly too, right? And you're like, I look at my scar now and I'm like, a baby came out of that. But so there's a lot that your core has gone through or that area has gone through. So knowing that, yeah, you're going to have to be gentle with that. Again, I would say a lot of the core recovery is going to be very similar to what I would recommend for anybody, of the breathing, of taking your time. But with the C-section, it's just being more aware of, you're going to have adhesions, you're going to have scar tissue. What can be really helpful that most women don't do is massage or, scar release, mobilization of that scar. Your best bet is to have a pelvic floor physical therapist or somebody do it for you. But there also are videos online and pelvic floor PTs that put stuff out there of how to do that. It takes a little while because it's super tender for a long time, but mobilizing that scar is going to help you not just improve that area. A lot of people talk about, I have the C-section shelf, or I have, lots of extra skin there. That's going to help with that, but it's also just going to help you move better.
Is that when the scar looks like it's very tight? It looks like tight and it kind of like
almost like a flap over.
Like
a lot
because
of
the
people,
scar tissue's so wound up right there. And they haven't kneaded it out the way they should.
Yeah. So mobilizing that area can be really helpful. And that's just something super simple you can do at home just with some lotion, just kind of getting that feeling back because it's tender for a long time. And then just, again, being gentle with your core, knowing we need to work from the inside out. We're not going to go back into our traditional core exercises right away and even for a while. I mean, and there were certain things for me. Lunges were really hard for me for a long time because every time I lunged deep, I could feel it. So knowing that you may have to make some additional modifications, and that's okay. I just needed to have more time for that scar to recover and for everything to get mobilized and get more blood flow to that area. But the core work, again, you just want to take it slow. You want to work from the inside out. You want to focus on the breathing. You want to focus on the connection. And then we'll have time later once everything is healed internally, your scar is healed, all of those things, that's when we can really rebuild that strength.
The recovery in 4th trimester, as you begin recovery, I saw obviously both the vaginal birth and a C-section. It was like 300% more difficult with the C-section.
Yes.
After Cameron, Morgan kind of would get up and, she's definitely feeling it, but could kind of do the old lady shuffle around the house. And when after the C-section surgery, it was like, she had it was a really major surgery. Yeah. And I just remember her mom coming down and just really me and our nanny at the time really having to pitch in extra. Yeah. Because Morgan is a very independent woman. Yeah. Like she wants to do all the things. And she was physically incapable really after the C-section. And it was just like this natural hunched over. Yeah. And it's like right in the center of your body where like even standing up straight was difficult for her. Yeah. And so does that extend then the 4th trimester recovery period for a lot of women? Or how do you think about that? For a lot
of women, I think it can, again, some people feel better quicker. Some people feel like they're, externally that the incision heals quicker. So a lot of it can be going by how you feel. But again, when you think of all the layers that get cut through and all that has to heal, I felt the same way. I joked that my neighbors, probably didn't know I would go out and walk the dog and just be like walking like an old lady. And you're used to using your core we use our core for everything we do. That's why we train it, right? In fitness. and you all of a sudden you can't get out of bed. You can't do any of the things. So, again, being gentle with yourself, certainly having a good support system. I was the same way. I was like, I'm fine. I can do this, but you really can't. Having that support system, allowing yourself that time to rest. And then when you do get into that core recovery, really taking it slow, working from the inside out.